Yo, yo, yo. All right. We're going to give people a couple minutes to roll on in, and then we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. We're going to meander quite a bit. Probably follow a little bit of this. Yo, Juan, what's going on? Brother, excellent. Thanks for sharing. Dino, see you down there. Good to have you, brother. Uh, you guys have been sending me some awesome content. Oh, I'm going to see if I can get the TikTok live thing to show up down here. Because we actually have people from TikTok watching and commenting. And I kind of have no idea how to see that. So I'm going to try to figure out on my phone real quick. So you guys... RJ, what's up, brother? Great to have you. I'm seeing the regulars roll on in. It's fantastic. Sorry I haven't been online this last week. It's been a little bit crazy, but a lot of that stuff is sorted-ish. And the good news is the hostinger, excellent. Yeah, Instagram is, a lot of people join there. But TikTok, I can't get the chat, and I don't want them to feel left out. Because I guess there's hundreds or maybe thousands of messages from the live stream chat that I've never seen, guys. I've never seen it because I don't know how to show it through the stuff, mostly because I'm completely inept. But anyway, the reason for the delay on the live streams is I was finishing the Hostinger VOD on how to properly sandbox through a VPS. Yeah, I miss you guys too. And don't worry, that's an unusual week. We'll get back to our rolling in every, I know, right? Every day, every other day. But let me see now if I can figure out how to get these guys to show. I can just see their chat. That's the only thing I really care about. So it's interesting. It says I'm live over. Oh, what's this? Ooh, there's a button over here, guys. So give me basically. Hold on, let's just move this over. Yeah, these are some of the things we're gonna talk about, especially if there are students that are on. Cyber, what's going on, man? If there's students that are on the live today, I actually need some student guidance, like very seriously, on one small thing. Then we're going to talk about Justin Officer dropped this gem on me this morning about this $500 million AI token burn. That's right. Some company just burned $500 million in tokens with Anthropic. We have an idea on who we think it is, but then talk a little bit about this LLM psychosis thing that's going on. And I suspect many of you that are on the live, you're not experiencing this, but you may not know how bad this LLM psychosis thing is. And I kind of have a front row seat to it because these people will DM me, and they're good people. I want to be super clear. I'm all for just trying to help them, and I don't know exactly how, but they will DM me with some pretty intense stuff, like they figured out how to solve quantum, or they have like figured out an entirely new way to do AI, or build new computers, time machines, you name it. And I want to be clear, I'm not discounting any of these folks, but many of them like don't have any background in these things. And it can be hard to basically, like, first of all, if you don't have a background in that area, it's really hard to know if you've actually invented something truly novel, because you don't know what exists, and you don't necessarily know the details of those things, so you can truly differentiate between your invention and the existing state of the art, the existing inventions. And that's all fine and dandy. The problem is when people go too far down this rabbit hole, and some of them are like unaliving themselves. That's the part that I get really concerned about. And many of you are probably aware of cases, but I think you may not know just how bad this is getting. So I want to talk about that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Chinese models, and talk about like the geopolitical state of the world. And now it's getting pretty complicated, and I just want to share kind of the landscape that I see it being in the valley, and kind of having a little insider knowledge on stuff that you guys might not be aware of. And then lastly, we'll talk about this thing, and then anything else that people bring up. So anyway, you've got oh, Twitch audio is fuzzy. Okay. Is anybody else getting bad audio? Maybe I might be, maybe I'm too close to the mic. I was intentionally trying to get a little closer because I just dropped a new... Yeah, exactly, Colin. Right. And I love that movie. By the way, oh, just so the IGers can see this. Soon we will figure out how to unify the chats. What I may do is I just may solve this myself, and I'll just build it into this control center. I'll figure out a way to basically read from all the different streams, unify it in an app I build myself, and that will solve it. And then figure out a way where I can type into this and it'll broadcast to everybody. Since somehow that doesn't seem to exist, and if I need to build it, I'll frickin' build it. Anyway, yeah, Colin, exactly, bro. So I love 12 Monkeys. By the way, there's a TV show, 12 Monkeys, I think, and it's like 5 seasons or something. It's a little dated now. So if you need to be like 2026 AI'd out with perfect graphics and all that stuff, you may not love it. But if you can get beyond that, the story is pretty good. And it basically takes the premise of the movie and expands on it deeply. One of my good friends recommended this, and once I was able to kind of get through... Yeah, exactly, Juan. I try to delegate this out. Like, can't you guys build this? But then when I see that they can't build it, then it's like, all right, fine, I'll build the thing myself. Damn it. I got other things to do, right? Like talk to all you guys. But it is what it is. So anyway, in that TV show, yeah, basically the way that I... Oh, yeah, so RJ, what I do is I have, in my setup, I have a second, or it's basically my third screen. I don't know, we'll call it my background screen. And my background screen is like always playing stuff. Usually it's playing like TV shows that I am really interested in. Like I was just having Taboo play in the background. By the way, that's another great one. If you guys haven't seen Taboo with, who does this star in? I can't remember the guy's name, but I absolutely love him. So what I do is I'll have the TV show that is in the background, and it'll be like muted, and I'll have subtitles on, and so it'll just be playing. And then what will happen is I'll be looking up every little bit, and then if I start to realize that this is actually a pretty cool show, then what I do is I then play it basically all the way through with only halfway paying attention. And then I play it again where I'm paying a little bit more attention. And usually by the fifth or sixth time, I've kind of pieced it all together. But this way I can have stuff coming in. Yo, JB, what's going on, brother? The whole crew showing up. Yeah, I appreciate it. You guys are awesome. So I basically will watch the same show 10 times in the background, not ever really paying attention to any of it. And then I'll get it. And maybe at some point, like toward the evening when I'm kind of super beat, I'll spend 30 to 60 minutes where I'll be watching it to kind of wind down and fall asleep. So that's generally how I do it. And I'm not saying this is a good approach, but you know, everybody, you do your own thing. This is kind of what I do. It's a bit haphazard, but what's nice about it, at least from my perspective, is there are a lot of good shows out there, but it's really hard to know which they are, because some of them are just major stinkers, and they're just marketing to no end, and that's getting it a lot of visibility, but they absolutely are not great. But then there's these other shows that are, yeah, that's kind of like exactly what I do. One is it's like a 10%, it might be even less than that. It might be like a 5% watch. And so it's kind of coming in the background, and then, yeah. Oh, I feel you. You know, you're probably running more efficiently than I am, RJ. And so you keep doing you. Don't get distracted by the silly stuff. I'm not nearly as hardcore. I need a little bit of a chill time. Okay, but hold on. Let me see if I can fix this TikTok thing. Because there's this TikTok live monitor. I'm going to bring this up. What is this? Maybe this will show me the chat. Live chat. Oh, okay. Testing TikTok chat. All right. Look at that. So, yeah, maybe this is what I should be doing. Awesome. Yeah, and I have no idea if this is total viewers right now. No clue. I've never used this thing before. So, okay, so we've got Case joining. Hey, Case. Good to see you. And I'm going to put this over somewhere. Maybe this is how we'll do it. And maybe what I'll do, guys, is I'll build my own system that unifies them. That is, if I can't find something that does the unification for us. Because Restream is kind of, at least from what I've seen, Restream is limited to YouTube, Twitch, and Kick. And so that's why we've got the IG over here, and now we've got TikTok. So all the you TikTokers, I want to apologize for the last several months. I've been live streaming on you, and I've never once seen the chat because I am incompetent and had no idea. Also on OBS, in my defense, let me just defend myself, my position for a moment. In my defense, in OBS, it says it's streaming, but it never shows that anybody's even on. And it wasn't until I was looking at TikTok, I don't know, last week, that it showed me that there were like hundreds or, I don't know, maybe thousands of comments for the live stream that I was like, huh, I haven't seen any of those. So now we are, oh, can I just pop this piece out? Oh, if I can just have the chat. Oh, sweet. Look at that. I can just have the chat. I don't even need whatever this other thing is. So, anyway, uh, I'm learning. Bear with me. I'm a noob to all this stuff, and we'll eventually figure it out. There should be like a pop out for IG too, right? Like, where's the pop out for IG? Because that would then I don't have to hide it over to the side. Because right, I have to hide it to the side because I'm seeing uh, the 30-second delay of me. Anyway, all right. So we've got our various chats, and we've got our general. I need to put this back in front. Our general topics. I'm gonna repin this. And you may notice that I've been leveling this baby up. That it, hold on, let me adjust this thing too. So while I'm getting everything set up, feel free to grab your caffeine, your popcorn, your whiskey, whatever you need to grab. Because I think that we may meander a little bit on this one, and we haven't really gotten into it yet. So now's the time to go do the bio stuff and refresh all the drinks and things. Because I don't think you'll want to miss when we actually get into the deep stuff. And that'll give me a few minutes to just fiddle with this setup. We'll use our OBS. We'll use JB's countdown system, wherever the heck that went. I think it's over here. No, it's not over there. Where did it go? Here it is. Found it. Here's my deadline. We will give me... You have 4 minutes. Go. I'm just readjusting this top, this input window of me to not waste so much space. Crop left. I readjusted a lot of this stuff for the Hostinger VOD. By the way, for the Hostinger VOD, it's totally done. Thank goodness. That took a while. And the only delay is I'm waiting for Hostinger's approval. Since I have full creative control, I don't actually have to wait for their approval, but, you know, we don't want to burn bridges with Hostinger. We want to have them be our friends and stuff. And so it's just general good practice to give them a chance to look at it and then tell us what they like, they don't like, all that. But the general plan on how we're going to broadcast this to the wider community, they're already on board with. They just need to look at the video that right now is unlisted. I could share it, but they'll probably give me the green light for it next week. But you're definitely going to want to watch that one. If you have any questions on how to set up a fully sandboxed environment. And in the sandbox that I set up, there's like 3 different kill switches. It's fully air gapped, and it runs a virtual desktop. It's running Cinnamon on top of it. So if you like visual rather than just using a terminal, the higher order sandbox is root protected, meaning you don't have root access in it. There's just like, it's how I would do it. And you're safe in 15 different ways, basically. There literally are 3 separate kill switches. There's actually 4, because of the air gap, you can cut it off. So if anything goes wrong, the AIs do the wrong thing, you get infected by some bad extension through VS Code, whatever, all of that stuff can be corrected without any risk of your own machine or your own like personal data, which is the most important piece in my mind. Labyrinth, what's going on? Good to see ya. Hey, Celia. Am I getting that right? Wait, I think I got that wrong. Sule. Sule? It's going great. How are you doing? So Dino is saying that he thinks that I think what he's saying is he thinks the 500 million token burn. Oh, no, Dino. Yeah, so I read this. No. Yeah, so I'm aware of this, that Microsoft and Uber reached their token cap for the year within the first quarter. Oh boy. Yeah, we got some problems here. But no, this one I think is significantly worse than that. Because Dino, I think what you're talking about is, I think they had allocated something like $500. What was it like? Or maybe it was $500 a month for their developers, and then they upped it to like 2,000 or something, but they still burned through the entire year of tokens within the first few months, right? I mean, the spending, as we've been on talking about, and many of you know, the actual cost of the LLMs, not the SLMs, but the LLMs is astronomical, and they're starting to bill you for it. And so, for any of you that have used AWS and your bill has gone sideways, this is like that, except 100 times worse. And this just does not make economical sense, right? It's a lot of us are foreseeing a kind of catastrophic failure where, and this is sort of how it works, is once you get the tech established and everybody has it, right? There's no true technical moat for most of the language models. They're all just based on transformers, and there's, little stuff here and there. I do think Anthropic has advances that the rest of them don't have, but what will likely happen is what you see in almost all markets is, at first, it's a race to establish yourself and get control of the market. But then, because there's no true technical moat, everyone can compete. And because everyone can compete, then the prices actually need to go down significantly because it's been commoditized. So if Anthropic is charging 100x, let's say, or even 10x more than Google, people will probably just switch to Google and be like, I don't need it to be a little bit better for 10x the price. So then what that means is that Anthropic has to drop its price. And so then the margins for each of these companies become extremely small. And let me tell you, that doesn't jive with these insane valuations that are just hype maxed. They don't make sense, which is part of the reason for the race for the IPO. Is they know the end is arriving. They know it's about ready. They can read the sentiment about how this is cool technology and it is super valuable, but it's not worth $500 million. It doesn't make you that much better, especially with a lot of it being slop, or you have to fix all of the stuff, right? Like I'm dealing with Claude constantly, like stuff that's just super basic that a junior engineer would know not to do. It screws up. It's actually quite amusing. So there's a lot of discussion about how something like 40% of the U.S. spending for companies, their CapEx, is toward AI. And once the AI bubble, or more particularly the language model bubble bursts, sorry, let me rephrase this, the large language model bubble bursts, then the CapEx spending is going to cut down significantly because they're being underpriced or fairly priced by lightweight models that are available for free, which is how this should work, right? That's why I'm such a big fan of the small language models, and it's why big tech really hates small language models. They despise it because you can circumvent the use of the cloud. This is, in my opinion, a big reason why Google forced the SLM download through Chrome, is they can see the future. They can see it just like we can, and the future is going to move away from cloud because people aren't going to pay a $500 million fee for slop, right? For stuff that's really not that great, when they can get these small language models that are domain specific and they work very well in a single domain, and you can run it on your hardware. You pay basically just your power bill, which is not going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, even if you were previously doing things like crypto mining, right? And I know some people that have like their arrays of GPUs where they were doing crypto mining. Even those folks were only getting into like the thousands of dollars per month on their power bill. Not in this space. Plus, they're making money every time they mine a new Bitcoin, right? So they're doing it because it pays the bills and it's profitable. Anyway, well, I do suspect that we are getting close now to this pretty big collapse of the lunacy. And guys, I love it. I absolutely love it, because this BS has been going on way too long. And as I think all of you know, I'm a huge, huge fan of AI and technology. I was a huge fan of this stuff way before it became popular. But I'm also a huge fan of doing this in an ethical way that actually makes sense and is sustainable, not whatever this lunacy is, this AI fanaticism that we're living in right now, that's mostly controlled by people that just care about greed, right? Because that's the majority. Unfortunately, a lot of people are just seeing this as a profit. They don't actually deeply care. If they deeply cared, they would have a deep background in this. They would have been doing this before it became hot and fancy, right? That's how you can kind of distinguish sort of the missionaries from the mercenaries. The missionaries, you can just follow the breadcrumbs and be like, huh, that person, sort of like the lady that figured out the RNA vaccine for COVID. Now, I don't want to get into all the COVID debate, whether you believe it's real or not real, or it was created in the lab or it wasn't. I mean, I think it kind of was. But anyway, all of that aside, the lady that figured this out, she didn't just stumble along with vaccines casually. She'd been doing research in this area for upwards of like 2 decades. So those are the kind of people that figure stuff out. It's very hard, no matter how smart you are. A lot of this it doesn't have to do with intelligence, it has to do with knowledge, right? I think this is where a lot of people get confused and I know many of you Jeets are 190 IQ savants, which is awesome, but just being hyper intelligent, which is great, does not implicitly generate vast amount of knowledge. And without the knowledge of how all these things work, your ability to solve problems a little bit faster than other people ultimately doesn't make that much of a difference, right? It's much more complex than this. And I think that's what I love about the Jeets is all of you guys are here not just because you're super smart, but because you want to learn. And when you combine those two things together, people that are intelligent and they have a growth mindset and they have an incredible discipline for perseverance, what you get is people that can really change the world. And it's very much a small footsteps every day. And Jay, deeply appreciate the kind words, my friend. It's, yeah, very appreciated. And thank you for joining. Dino saying, I saw top 5 tech combined companies in India is less than, yeah, no doubt, is less than Anthropic's valuation. And it's better so they're scared to be obsolete. Yeah, I think personally, I think that Anthropic has value. But is it really worth, what is the number now? Like $500 billion? Right? Like, I mean, there's flash in the pan, and then there's, like, think about it this way for just a second. Roll back in history and think about when social media was just starting. And in particular, there is this one company, Facebook, that supposedly was this super hot company, and they were the center of the universe, and they're going to change everything, and they completely dominated the market, right? Oh, 900 billion. Yeah, exactly. So $900 billion. My bad. Thanks, Justin. So here you have, and a lot of that is based on traction, right? It's the idea that, well, they captured the market, and so they have traction. But what people are not understanding, especially some of these investors that aren't like thinking things through, a lot of this traction is it's shiny, it's fancy and new, and there really aren't alternatives. But when you, hold on, what does this say? Live visibility restricted for 10 minutes. Your live is not eligible for recommendations and restricted to search results for the next 10 minutes because your live does not comply with the for your feed eligibility standards under. Oh, it's it looks like someone's reporting us on TikTok because they don't like that we're talking about the truth. This is my speculation. I love this. Like, I get this kind of stuff all the time. Here, I want you guys to see this. For any of you that aren't seeing this, right? This is the kind of stuff that, like, they're more likely than not, there's some individual that doesn't like the fact that I'm saying things like, this is hype. This is mostly BS. And so we get these kind of things. Look at the reason here. Misinformation that may cause moderate harm. Okay. Like, really? What exactly have I said that is misinformation? What are those points? Like, okay. Like, let's just assume that this is correct for a second. What are the data points that validate this claim? Where are they? Because if I don't know what those data points are, I can't possibly refute them. This is just an umbrella statement for them to be able to shut us down, probably very much because TikTok is still run by China. And if I say things like, don't use Chinese models because they're intended to undercut the US economy and they may be spying on you, then TikTok's not going to like that. The part that is the craziest is our visibility and like our followers on TikTok is like non-existent. Is like 3,000 people or something. Why would TikTok be so afraid? Right? Like, why would they go out of their way to try to shut this down when the audience is this small? And the way that I view these things, guys, is every time I get stuff like this where they're saying things, oh, COVID, well, oh, yeah. Oh, I probably said, right. I said the COVID word. And I also implied that I think that it could be created. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that okay, yeah, right. Those are certain words that we don't want to say. They're probably going to be blocking me multiple times during this live stream. So we better get ready for that thing to pop up all over the place. So thank you, TikTok, for timing me out. I love it. All you've done is help validate our existence, right? The more we get them to shut us down or try to shut us down, the more we realize that we're actually saying something meaningful. And, you know, stop with the over censorship. It's just insane. Like, the next thing that they're going to want to do is start burning books, right? Like let's talk about burning books for a second, just so we understand the parallel. I'm of the mindset that in a near perfect world, there are no books that are ever burned. Because it's very simple. You can just choose not to read those books. And they're just words. And so what you decide to do after you read that book is your decision. That's just on you. And so the book can be full of misinformation. It could be full of things that are lies. It could be full of nonsense. When you go out of your way to shut down people and their ability to say things, what you basically are saying is, I control what you are allowed to hear. And I don't think that that's great. I don't really want to live in any kind of regime Like, and I want to be clear, I'm not saying that you should promote hate speech or you should go out of your way to write really nasty things about all that. But I think that the inverse is worse because it's a very slippery slope, right? It almost always starts with good intentions. That you start down the path of, look, this book has so much misinformation and it's so damaging, we have to shut it down. And then so everybody agrees, right? You all agree that, yeah, this is really bad. It's just nonsense. It's all misinformation. So then we ban that. Then you get something else. Well, it's not quite as extreme, but I still don't like it, right? I still don't like it because, it's 90% not correct. Or, it kind of openly disagrees with me and it calls me bad names. It says things about me that I don't want people to hear. And we're not even necessarily talking about libel or defamation, right? Because like spreading lies about people is not super great. And I think that there are some specific rules on this. But even those, I think, like, I don't know, it's complicated. But the point is that if you're talking in these general things and you get some of these details wrong, you could fall under that umbrella of anything that you say that's slightly not in line with that government or that organization or whatever can't be said. And what you end up with is a tyranny. What you end up with is authoritarianism. What you end up with is the CCP. I bet for sure I'm going to get blocked for that one, right? And that's not great, right? I don't think that, I know I've had actually lots of students come over from other countries that have come to the US because they don't want to be part of those governments where everything is monitored, everything is censored, and the slightest deviation from what is acceptable will get them into a huge amount of trouble, potentially get them disappeared, right? I mean, that's not great. So, yeah. So thank you, TikTok. I appreciate it. You keep doing your thing. Excellent. Okay. So, yeah, and this is, I think as many of you know, I oftentimes will speak in code, but sometimes I slip up. But this is why I say unalived and things, and then I'll use other things to not refer to, very specific things that I know are these censored words. But I do think someone was saying, Juan was saying, I think I said this word. And I think that's probably what triggered it. It might even be a bot. But I do know that there are some people that specifically want us to be shut down because there's a little bit too much truth on what's happening with AI. And that could potentially really hurt some of these multi-billion-dollar or trillion-dollar valued companies and their quest for world domination. Like there's, as we probably all saw with the Hugging Face offer, right? For those of you that aren't aware, let me just quickly bring you up to speed. So we did this, I think it was a live stream, and we're talking about how there's no way to run security analysis on models, on neural network models, because they're just weights, and basically weights are just numbers, and there's no logic And this is how I mean, it's a form of logic and pattern recognition, but weights on their own, that pattern may appear in a completely benign setting and be perfectly okay. That same pattern in a different domain could be completely malicious. So you can't really apply these things that we used to apply for typical uh, virus scanning, right? There is no technology. And we talked about basically, so what is Hugging Face supposed to do? Because we were talking about the ClawHub issue with the malicious skills. And really, to be clear about this, it's the fusion of the ClawHub malicious skills with the models that you can download from Hugging Face or the LLMs. But it's very hard to infect the LLMs. I mean, you can, right? Because you can get them to learn these skills, but you can't necessarily corrupt the LLM model itself. You can just affect it temporarily. It's not generally going to allow your influence to write to its main system. But the SLMs, you could. So anyway, when you have these local models and you fuse them with malicious skills, you can do really, really bad things. And so there's two things that you need to be able to control to stop this from happening. You need to be able to stop bad models from being uploaded to places like Hugging Face and ensure that only good models are uploaded, which is basically an impossibility problem. There's no way, at least that I'm aware of, where you can do this. You can't. You basically just have to upload the model and cross your fingers. That's the first piece. And then the second piece is with the skills, you can do a deep analysis on the skills and then ensure that they're not going to infect the model with bad behavior. Now, the skills are actually pretty easy. All you need to do, I mean, let me rephrase that. Easier, because the skills are generally in markdown files, right? They're just a list of things that it should generally do. And you can actually even have an LLM or an SLM scan that skills markdown file and look for things that seem unusual and then have that be a first pass scan that's done by your bot, right? The language model bot. And then if it flags something, then send it to an expert human or somebody that has a brain. And then they'll say, no, this is okay. Or they'll say, no. Okay. So the skills part can actually be mitigated. It can be mitigated. It's just a care question. And it's obvious that ClawHub just doesn't care enough about this. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to be honest. Is that if they went slower and they cared a little bit more, you wouldn't have malicious skills. It's that simple, right? Think about malicious code that gets injected into the Linux kernel. When's the last time that's happened? Like actual malicious code in the Linux kernel. I don't know the last time it's happened. I do know about the XZ utils lib backdoor, but that wasn't code. That was an encrypted tarball file that had object code, and that was a social engineering hack by a nation state. It's very different than actually accepting malicious code. And the reason why you don't see the Linux kernel getting corrupted with malicious code is you have a bunch of people that deeply care, and they deeply scrutinize every commit to make sure that nothing bad goes in. ClawHub could be doing the same thing. They could have the same rigorous process to ensure that no nefarious skills get uploaded and given to the public. This is not a question of whether or not it can be done. It's just a question of, are they going to be ethical and responsible and care enough to do it? That's the state of the union right there. Now, when we go back to Hugging Face, though, it's actually much more complicated because we don't have the ability to scan these models and find anything meaningful. It's just a bunch of numbers. So Hugging Face can essentially do like, I mean, there's many ways to try to deal with this, but ultimately there's sort of the space of they no longer host models, and they're not going to do that, right? Because that's their whole business model. Or they do what they're doing today, which is basically give people access to the models, and then we're all their guinea pig, and then our machine gets hijacked or infected with these malicious things, and then we complain to Hugging Face, and they say, "Oh man, that totally sucks. We'll remove that model. Sorry that your life is wrecked." That's basically it right there, guys. I mean, that is it. Now, they could take like more waved steps on releasing the models and then have it go through a staged release or do other things, right? But this is going to require more care. This is going to require more time. Anyway, so we did this, and then there was a short clip that we posted on IG that went minorly viral, right? I don't know, maybe 100,000 views or something. And 2 days later, 2 days, guys, this random marketing team reached out to me and said, "We're doing a Hugging Face campaign, and we really want you to be part of it. We really want, we love your, we love your channel. We love your stuff." Now, we talked about this on the Discord, and the truth is, I think Freddie actually convinced me that we should do it, because if it builds a bridge with Hugging Face, then we can actually start to fix Hugging Face on the inside. But the point of all of this is we kind of know in some sense now that big tech and other people are watching, and I think that's good. I like that, and I hope that we can influence them in a positive way. Some of them, I think, are so far gone that I'm not really interested in helping them, because they've just demonstrated that they're very clear bad actors, and there's just no way, right? Like, I'll just speak as plainly as possible. That company is OpenAI. There's just no way that I would partner with Sam Altman and his team of hooligans and mercenaries, no matter what. There's too much evidence that shows that there's a massive amount of corruption in that company that I don't think that there's any point in trying to help them, because their leadership is broken. If they get new leadership, like, and keep in mind, I'm not saying that OpenAI itself is a bad company. Like, the people that work there are probably great, but when the leadership is such con artists and such scam artists and so without ethics, then you're kind of helping unethical people profit. And I'm not super keen on doing that. So they're out. But everybody else, I think, even with their missteps, they're still kind of in, right? I think that I don't love the stuff that they're doing, but I can kind of understand they're in a race that's they don't control. It's complicated, and they're just trying to survive. And sometimes they do things that are like not great, like what Hugging Face is doing. But if you kind of put yourself in their shoes, you can kind of understand it. I mean, I'm not trying to justify it in any way, but it's like it almost makes sense. And so those companies, I think we can help. Like, we can partner with Hugging Face and try to get them a solution and help them level up their security so they don't allow models that are malicious directly. Because that is the ultimate hack. AI takeover. If you haven't watched the VOD that I just dropped, you should definitely check that out at some point. Maybe after this live stream or when you have a moment. Let me actually find that real quick. But I get into why AI takeover is just so much worse than the traditional things that we've seen. And a lot of it basically just has to do with the massive capability. Is they're capable of just so much more than traditional software is. Yeah, so it's this one. But let me find it on the new channel. While I'm looking this up, so we have the two YouTube channels, and I want to let you guys know the retraining of the algorithm, it's already working. That I can see now in small footsteps that some of the shorts are actually going viral. That I think I've seen two now. I mean, virality in very small terms, but there's like, so the average views for the new YouTube channel for the shorts is on the order of maybe 50. That's like really good. More like it's 20. There's a couple clips that we dropped that have gone viral on their own due to the algorithm figuring itself out, and they're in the order of hundreds of views. It's orders of magnitude different than the normal behavior, which indicates to me that recreating the channel and getting the actual like bots out of there is having impact and making the algorithm work the way that it should work. So that makes me very happy. Anyway, so this is the VOD that you guys should check out. It's basically a slightly carved up version of, look at this, I'm for the first time going to drop that link on TikTok. So you should check that one out, and it gets into the differences and the power of AI takeover, and then why we have to start to reevaluate a lot of the things that we've done historically. Like, generally speaking, the way that software is being developed and our trust of software. This gets into the disabling all auto updates and full sandbox, this type of stuff that I think we have to do now that AI fanaticism has kind of taken over people's minds. All right. I also want to mention, since a lot of you guys are software developers, the new emphasis for these hackers are developers. They are specifically targeting developers and supply chain, especially because developers are now the most vulnerable that they've ever been due to the AI fanaticism. And I actually captured this. This is from AI Weekly. I'm on their feed. And this is a capture of some of the stuff that they've observed. And so I captured this specifically so you guys could see this. And we've talked a lot about this, but this is coming directly from them. They are saying that the AI supply chain is under siege. Those are their words, not mine. And they give a whole bunch of data, very much like the data that I've been giving. And the key target here for many of these systems are developers that are using these AI systems for software development. And so you're seeing like this one, right? I've never heard of this Starlet thing before, so I'm a little bit clueless. But 400,000 GitHub dependents. If you infect this with malicious operations, then all those folks are now potentially at risk. And this doesn't even get into what we think may happen now that GitHub has been compromised with those 3,800 repos. Thus, the importance of really trying to make sure, if you are a developer and you're watching this, strong recommendation that you sandbox yourself, because I'm really nervous about what Team PCP is going to do with those 3,800 repos that they have access to. And like I've been saying, I think, and many of us know, Team PCP having the source code is going to make it very easy for them to insert malicious behavior that's going to be on a cold path or won't execute under normal circumstances. So then, and we know that they're really good at creating copycat clones. And if they create a strong copycat clone of GitHub, and GitHub is, as Sato was saying in a former live stream, the apex of access, the possibility of infection is not in the hundreds of thousands. It's in the millions. It's in the tens of millions, right? So now is the time to get sandboxed. Like, seriously. Set up a VPS. I don't care what VPS you use. Our sponsor is Hostinger, but use whatever you want. Just try to make sure that you're sandboxed and it's air-gapped. And the reason why you want it to be air-gapped is so you can cut it off if anything goes wrong. If you don't have it air-gapped and you get infected, there may be no way to get rid of it, and then it can spread, right? It can spread to your network. It can spread to, like, really smart hackers can take that infection that's going to be local to one device and spread it throughout your entire network. What I'm talking about is infecting your phones, infecting your smart devices, right? Your family, if they're on that same local network, all your family's devices. So your partner's computer and their phone, your kids' phones, right? Like, really smart hackers can, and Team PCP, these dudes are extremely smart. Anyway, so yeah, lots of stuff going on. I want to take a quick deviation from this and look at some of the comments that I've been ignoring. Oak is saying that he respects that, or she respects that Altman doesn't care a bit about ethics or even basic humanity manners. Yeah, 100%. It's there's very few people that I think you guys know the rule that I have is I very rarely will say anything negative about an individual person. I usually will target sort of these bigger abstract things, like I'll pick on companies. But certain people have elevated themselves to first order status through an enormous body of evidence that's undeniable. And that guy is one of them. OpenAI, SoftBank knows. We'll see how it unfolds. It is going to be very interesting, I think, how it unfolds. But this is one of the reasons why I think it actually makes it so easy for me to support Anthropic. Is I don't think Anthropic's perfect, and I don't love some of the carelessness, but I don't know that Dario is like going out of his way to be malicious. I think that he's human. We all make mistakes, and he's probably in a bind himself, but I think he's probably a decent human being. That's at least what, from what I've seen. And I don't think that Anthropic is worth $900 billion. I think that's insanity. And I think the market's going to show us that very quickly once they IPO and it goes like this. Right. And I think, didn't SpaceX just IPO or something? And like that one's complicated because SpaceX is sort of a conglomeration now of a whole bunch of things. It's not just SpaceX, because I think they acquired, didn't they acquire XAI? Does anybody know? And so I think that's part of SpaceX. So it's literally like a conglomerate of a few different companies. And I think that the SpaceX portion of SpaceX is actually pretty legitimate. I think that it's not perfect, but I think that's a very hard thing to do, what they're doing. But when you look at the AI-only companies that are basically just large language models, and that would be principally almost all the companies that are part of the Transformer era. Obviously, the two big ones that come to mind are OpenAI and Anthropic, but you have like Perplexity is in there, Midjourney is in there, Sonos is in there. Then you have some of the ones that were created as spin-outs, like Mira's company, Thinking Labs. It's not clear exactly what they're doing. But all of those guys, I think, are going to be super compressed in this space where they're all competing with each other. And because of the lack of technical moat, their margins are going to get extremely thin. And in some sense, it's kind of interesting because you want at least two winners, right? When are we going to do shots on stream? Yeah, so Poe, here's the first thing. I don't drink. Okay, so you guys can do shots, right? I used to drink. If I'm being honest, I enjoy whiskey too much, and I build up extremely strong tolerances to whiskey very fast, and so I need to just not touch that stuff. But you guys can do shots, right? You do whatever you want, right? I'm gonna limit it to my vape, which is well, it doesn't inhibit my thinking. We'll limit it to that. But you guys are welcome to do whatever you want to do. There's no judgment here, right? Especially since this should be a somewhat chill environment where we want to slowly meander over these topics. And yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think if we meander just a little bit and let's talk about alcohol. So back when I used to drink and when I was like undergrad, I got exposed to all the kind of silly stuff that you do in undergrad. And so we tried a whole bunch of these different whiskeys and, like the hard liquor, right? Beer is, for those of you that don't drink, you can get drunk off of beer, right? But not really. Not like blackout drunk like you can if you drink the harder stuff. The stuff that's 40 proof or above. When you start getting into 80 proof, 100 proof, upwards, like the moonshine stuff, which I think is like 200 proof, you drink a small amount of that stuff and that will drop you really fast. So anyway, in my undergrad days, because of some of my friends, we explored a variety of things, and there's a few in there that are just the absolute worst. in my mind. I don't even know why I drink these, and like I'll never drink these again because they're just ridiculously bad. And there's two on my list. Okay. And keep in mind, I used to drink whiskey. I literally drank whiskey for, I don't know, like 15 years. So I really like whiskey, which is a part of the reason why I don't drink whiskey anymore. I kind of, I'm just being real with you. I just like it too much. And so I need to just stick with my vape, and everything's much better. So the two in the list that are super awful in my mind, Jägermeister and Bacardi 151. Like, can I see a show of hands? Like, if you guys, can you drop like a 1 in the chat if you have had, if you've experienced either Jägermeister or Bacardi 151. By the way, the 151, I believe, stands for its proof. So 151 proof, which basically means it's 75% alcohol. 75% alcohol, guys. That is a lot. That is significantly more than like the typical whiskey. Because whiskey, I think, on average is going to be 40% alcohol. It's like 80 proof. Yeah, so Bacardi 151 is the next level. Ugh. I mean, 1 or 2 shots of that, and yeah. Right. And yeah. Poe, that's awesome. And as far as Jägermeister goes, I don't even remember what the occurrence was on why we were drinking Jägermeister. I just remember thinking that it tasted awful. It was like really, really bad. Okay. I want to go to the chat now because you know what? You guys are making me get into this. I'm going to get into it. So many of you brought this up. I'm going to talk about it. So Yui's asking, isn't whiskey greater than vape? Okay, so Yui, just for clarification, are you asking like is whiskey like worse than vape as far as like for you? Or are you saying it's like better as in whiskey's better than vaping? Because I think the science is still uncertain, but I have some scientific evidence because I've done a little bit of investigation into this. I'm not saying that I actually know the answer, and I'm not trying to encourage anyone, especially if there's kiddies, if there's any like high schoolers or people that are not of age on this channel, don't do this. This is not for you. But if you're of age, wherever you live, then that's your decision to make. But I want to kind of explain the new data that exists for nicotine vapes because it may surprise you. It may actually be different than what you were told when you were back in the cigarette days. Like, notice too that vaping and cigarettes are not at all the same thing. That I think there is definitive scientific evidence that cigarettes are not healthy. But it's not because of the nicotine. It's because of the tar and the other stuff that they put into cigarettes. That's the stuff that's like really bad. The new science that's emerging, and I encourage you to Google this on your own and find the scientific literature. Not just like somebody writing a blog post about it, but actual scientific research. Some of the things that I've seen, and I'm not an expert in this, so I could be totally wrong. I could also be just trying to promote that I vape with nicotine and I enjoy it. But the data that I've seen is first And foremost, nicotine is addictive. There's no question about it. It's highly addictive. But the truth is, almost all the things that we like are actually addictive. One of the most addictive things that we intake constantly is sugar. It's true. If you look at the data, sugar is actually one of the most addictive things that we eat. And some people say that the addiction for sugar is even greater than that of some of the really hard drugs. I'm not going to mention their name because TikTok's going to ban me for another whatever minutes. And users over on TikTok now, I guess my 10-minute ban has been lifted. Users saying both are bad for hangovers. It's good to be healthy. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Nicotine is not that addictive. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree, actually, is that I think that nicotine is addictive, but I don't think it's nearly as addictive as people make it out to be. And I'm not, I used to smoke cigarettes. I won't touch cigarettes anymore at all. No way. Like the scientific evidence is just overwhelmingly negative. And so it's very clear. And I'm not, like, I want to also be clear. I'm not saying you should do this. So please don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to get anybody to vape that doesn't already vape. I don't want to be a bad role model. I'm just trying to look at this in a way that I think is a little bit more fair and honest. Is a big reason why you're seeing a lot of negative sentiment about vaping is because of big tobacco. This is actually why. Is vaping is directly and negatively impacting big tobacco's income because there is early evidence that vaping is significantly healthier than cigarettes are. I'm not saying that vaping is without health risks. I'm just saying that when you compare it head to head against cigarettes, the data that we seem to have is pretty clear. There are questions about like the fumes that are coming from the vape, but largely this is water, so it's different than the carcinogens that you get from things that are like on fire. And those carcinogens, they're not limited to cigarettes. It's any carcinogen. It's like if you're constantly exposed to smoke from like a bonfire, right? Or grilling. Or like this is a big reason why people, miners, would get things like the black lung, right? That wasn't smoke necessarily, but it's inhaling these particles in the air that over prolonged periods of time, they can cause some damage. So any time you breathe air that has anything in it, there could be questions to your health. Now, so the nicotine part, okay. So Yui, I think I got you health-wise, but which are you saying is better? Are you saying that whiskey is better health-wise than vape? Yeah, and Vic, 100. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. And again, you guys are welcome to disagree. I'm not saying do this. Don't do this. But compared to cigarettes and stuff. But what's really interesting is now if you move away from that's totally possible. Now if you move away from the vaping aspect of it and you focus just on the nicotine and the potential health benefits of the nicotine, there are a number of comparisons that are relating it to caffeine. And this is, I think, quite interesting, is that almost everyone that is on the live stream right now, I can almost guarantee you that each one of you are probably ingesting caffeine in some capacity, and maybe some more than others, right? And the delivery mechanism for the caffeine can vary, right? And any of these things in large quantities can hurt you, right? You can actually unalive yourself from drinking too much water. Yes, people have actually unalived themselves by drinking too much water. They used to do this on like these radio shows, right? Where they'd have the drinking water contest and people would actually, yeah. So this is, I think, the biggest point that Yui's making that I actually fully agree with is everything in moderation. Everything in moderation. Exercise in moderation, vaping in moderation, or just don't vape, right? Caffeine in moderation, your recreational things in moderation, food in moderation, like sugar in moderation, all of these things in moderation. And I think that the core problem with all of these things is the overuse of them. That's the principal issue. Like even like one of the main topics that I want us to discuss today is this one. This LLM psychosis. How does this happen? This tends to happen due to lack of moderation of use of language models. That's the core issue. The core issue is that people somehow kind of lose their way and they become so locked with these language models that they get kind of confused. Again, these are good people, right? Let's not throw them under the bus just because they don't necessarily have the willpower to be able to differentiate between reality and, we could also get into like what is real and are we living in a simulation? All of these very complicated questions that I don't know that we all know the answer to. But this LLM psychosis, I think, largely is the result of, this is my speculation, I suspect all of these. So let me back up. As I think many of you know, I principally foster goodwill. I think people are good by nature. And I think sometimes people get off the path and they need a little help to get. Yeah, Juan, I had that full 15 years of not moderation, but none of that to balance out the 15 prior years of my life where there was a large component. Anyway, where was I? I was talking about these language models and, so backing up. So I think all people, I don't have the jaded view where I think people are bad. And I refuse to buy into this narrative. And I've had a lot of people that have misused that. And after a number of strikes, then I just kind of cut them out. But I need overwhelming evidence because people make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. So with the people that are getting to the LLM psychosis, I don't think that they're bad people. I don't think that they're dumb people. I don't think that they are intentionally trying to mislead anyone else or that they're hyper delusional. What I think is happening in a lot of these cases is the first piece is a lot of these people are just very lonely. This is the first piece. And keep in mind, the part that I may know about with this LLM psychosis that you guys may not know about, or you may not know about as much, a lot of these people contact me directly. I mean, if you were to see what my DMs look like, you would understand that they will send me walls of text, and some of them will ping me every hour for some prolonged period of time waiting for a response. And again, I don't judge people. I'm not trying to say, what the F, not at all. Like, I think some of them, they would like me to help validate the things that they believe they're seeing with the language model, but they want a person that has a technical background to look at it to tell them if they're crazy or not. This is actually a really good sign, right? Is they're intelligent enough and thoughtful enough to realize they might be getting very confused by the AI. So they would like a human that's an expert in that space to kind of help them out. But so I probably see this because I may be a little bit more visible, significantly more than some of you see it. But maybe you see it too. Maybe you have a friend that's kind of going off the deep end, and all they do is they talk with the AIs now, and they start talking about the AI as it's a person and it's alive, and it's not. It's just math. Ultimately, it is just a text file that has a really good ability to appear in a way that's human, because it makes it easier for us to interact and we can communicate sort of along the same mediums. But so what I think happens is there's two fundamental properties, I think, that lead to this LLM psychosis that I'm seeing a lot of in social media. And most of these folks, what they do, at least with me, is they ping me privately and they will send me a lot of messages, a huge volume of messages. Some of them will be like rapid fire, right? It'll be, and I'm not going to mention any names because my goal here is not to demean them or make fun of them or anything like that. I just want you to kind of see what the behavior is. So you might be able to spot people that may be going down this rabbit hole, and you can help correct them, because some of them, the problem that I think is really dangerous is some of them, through these language models and through these AIs, they end up doing really bad things either to others or to themselves. In fact, there was a violent act that was in the United States very recently where this person they did some bad things with weapons, and a lot of people were injured. I think there may be some people that didn't actually survive. But when you look at the history of how this happened, a lot of this was a co-conspiracy with the AIs. It was deliberated on, it was discussed with this person and the AI for months, I think. It was a plan in process. This is actually part of the massive lawsuit that's happening with OpenAI right now, if you're not aware. There's I think maybe it's a class action lawsuit now of people that have gone through this LLM psychosis, and then they either have hurt themselves in a permanent, irreversible way, as in they're not around anymore, or even worse is they've hurt other people and themselves, right? So this LLM psychosis thing is something that is affecting some hopefully small group of people. And the two characteristics that I see, at least in the interactions that I have with people that I think are very clearly affected by it. And when you see people that are affected by it, I want to just be really transparent. It's super obvious. It's not like it's a subtle, like, oh, they're using the AIs and it's interesting. At least for me, it's like inescapably obvious, because the level of disconnect between reality and where they are is so massive that the way that they even communicate is somewhat incoherent. Like, they're not even sort of understandable anymore. So anyway, the two characteristics that I see is, the first is, I think these folks are extremely lonely and they have no interaction mechanism. To be honest, this is part of the reason why I wanted to create GTT, is I think the world is more lonely than we've ever been, which is really crazy considering that social media. But I think social media in some ways is actually a little bit of the culprit. And it's because interaction or feeling of connectedness is so easy through social media that people no longer have to talk to other people directly. And you can still feel kind of connected, right? You had movies, you had TV shows, but that's not like interactive. And then when you go into social media, you can kind of have your interactions with your friends and then maybe not have to see them. And I think that that's not bad. I think that's actually good that we have the ability to communicate in a global way, digitally, like we are right now. But I still think that having people that you are able to interact with in person is healthy. Like we are, if you look at the history of the human race, like we are a social animal, and that's how we've survived. It's one of the core traits that we share with like wolves, right? We're highly effective because we're intelligent, but we know how to work in packs. We're social creatures. So we have now, I think, like a large majority of the world that is lonelier than ever. That's the first quality. Then the second is that when you're lonely, it's very easy, I think, for you to become easier to manipulate. If you aren't lonely, or you have people in your inner circle that you can trust, they can ground you, right? They can, you're at the bar or you're out with your friends, and then there's a person that is maybe up to no good, and they're trying to get you away from your friends. And then your friends are like, hey, don't do this. We don't trust this guy, right? I hate to say it, but yeah. There are some not great guys out there, right? There are some not great gals out there, but I don't know. The numbers are slanting, not in guys' favor. So what happens though is, if you have your circle of friends and you have your inner trust, they will keep you from losing yourself and making really bad decisions. Now imagine that scenario, but you don't have your friends. It's just you. Now imagine that you are very lonely and you're sort of in this space now. I'm not talking about the AIs. I'm just talking about you going to a bar or whatever, and someone is trying to manipulate you, whether it be a man or woman or otherwise. And the likelihood, if you are really sort of in a state of desperation because you just are lacking attention, then you might be easier to convince given the current state that you're in, right? It's this thing called recency bias, right? Recency bias is that things that are happening to us right now will oftentimes feel significantly more important than they really are, because we are losing the ability to look at the bigger picture, and we're focusing just on this short window of time because we just experienced this. So you're in this state, and then the likelihood that you can be taken advantage of. Yeah, I've had some experiences, Sig, and yeah. Let me just give you all a very strong tip. Don't accept drinks from strangers, and whenever you're at a bar, never, ever, ever leave your drink alone or drink from something that you didn't make yourself or made directly from the bartender. All right, it's way too easy to put stuff in people's drinks. I've actually had this happen to me, I think, one time, and thank goodness I think I had like a really, really strong tolerance So I was able to kind of keep my head on and get out of that situation. And it was completely unexpected. I only stepped away from my drink for like literally 1 minute, just for a bio break, and came back, and somebody had put something in my drink very clearly. Anyway, so back to the point of this is that you're in this situation, and your recency bias is creating confusion in your mind. And so you end up doing something that you normally wouldn't do, that you can reflect on later when you have a clear head and say, oh my gosh, this is so stupid. What was I thinking? Right? I've done this dozens of times, maybe hundreds of times when I was younger. I tend to do this significantly less nowadays because I tend to be like a little bit, hopefully a little bit wiser. And I also am very particular about the spaces that I'm in. I have very strict rules that I follow, right? Like, yeah, I'm an old man. What can I tell you? I'm to bed by 10 p.m. kind of thing. So now take this same type of mentality where the person's lonely and they're in a little bit of a state of desperation, and change the bar scene to interaction with an AI. And that AI is always available, that AI is programmed to support any tangent and any kind of meandering that you're going to go on, and make it feel as though this is logical. Like literally the AIs, almost all of them, are programmed to essentially be as agreeable as possible. That's part of their training. So here's you, a lonely person that's extremely easy to manipulate, and you start dropping random things into the AI, like, hey, AI, have you ever thought about maybe we're living in a simulation? Because I've thought about it, and it seems, interesting. And then rather than saying, well, that's an interesting kind of thing, there's actually a whole bunch of exploration on this. And now this topic that you were looking at only peripherally, right, is being re-engaged by this AI that's trying to be agreeable, so you will essentially be token maxed. Right? This is part of maybe the part that maybe isn't great with the companies, is there's an angle for deeper engagement with humans, principally for profit, not for the betterment of humanity. It's more just the benefit of their checkbook. And now, given the advances of the AIs and their context windows and the memories that you can store locally, they can start to expand on these topics in great detail. So something that was maybe just a very minor idea, or something that was you were considering in passing, now can progressively become the central piece of your life. And I think that this is part of what's happening, right? It's obviously much more complicated than this, and there's many ways that this can happen, but it is happening, and it's happening in catastrophic, irreversible ways, right? Like, there's always going to be bad stuff that's going on, and that's just part of the world. And I think, as Yui was pointing out, going back to her original comment, is if things are used within moderation, I think that these types of things become significantly less likely. I don't know actually how to solve this. I want to be super clear. I'm first of all, I'm not a psychiatrist, so this isn't my area, but I do and have done a reasonable amount of research in cognitive studies because of my background in machine learning and AI, because I'm very interested to understand not only how the biological brain works, but interested to understand how we behave on a psychological and a sociological way. And as many of you know, I was also married to a world-renowned and very established sociologist for 11 and a half years. And so I probably know significantly more than any normal computer scientist should know about things like sociology and psychology, simply because of my exposure with her, her teaching me all kinds of things. And so I guess maybe the overarching point of all this, the takeaways are, this LLM psychosis thing is likely to get worse as more people go down these rabbit holes, and we probably need some kind of mechanism to help people gradually reintegrate, right? I'm trying to help some of the people that have clearly reached a very serious degree of this, but I gotta, from my interactions, it's very challenging to begin to convince them that the things that they're saying don't quite make sense. At least for the folks that are reaching out to me. And it's possible that I'm getting involved too late. So by the time they're sending me text messages, like, let me give you an example. There's one individual who reached out to me, and he's been talking to me for, let's say, 6 months. Every day, this individual sends me and a group of hundreds, maybe thousands of people on their email list that includes a document of rambling that is usually 10 to 50 pages long. Every day. Every day. And it's a different document. It's something. Then this individual is pinging me saying, have you read the thing? There are hundreds of these things. This person, I think, have some sort of cognitive break or dissonance that's going on, because I think a normal person would realize it's not reasonable to think that a person that you don't deeply know would look at a 10 to 50 page document in great detail every day that is marching forward. That's just an unreasonable request of anyone's time, even for people that you know well. But something has moved this person a little bit off this space. What's really interesting is that, again, I do see that there's different stages of this, and I can see that some people are maybe further down the rabbit hole, and I don't this individual. I can't have a meaningful conversation with them to try to help them. I don't think that they're a bad person, and I do want to help them, but they don't understand how those documents no one is looking at. It's just crazy to even for let's say you take me, and I have all these channels and stuff. If I were to start sending all of you guys a 50-page document every day, you would probably be like, Goju's lost his frickin' mind. What is this? This is insanity. Even with my partner, who is my favorite person in the world, at most, maybe she's going to get 10 one-line text messages from me a day. Oftentimes I'm actually getting yelled at because I'm not sending enough text messages, right? But there's a point to where we have an understood social norm that we follow that is like acceptable behavior. And I think many of us know what this is. But I do think that there becomes a point where you can have some sort of cognitive break where the laws of society, these implicit rules, are no longer valid. But I don't know exactly where this snapping point is happening. So the reason why I'm talking about it on our live stream is almost all of us here are deeply engaged in technology. And because of that, in order for this to happen, you kind of have to be interacting with an AI. I would, yeah, yeah, and Sean, so I want to just be clear about these 50-page documents. So Sean just jumped in for those of you that are on Insta. Hold on, let me just put this up. Because Sean and I are, I love Sean to death. He's a good guy. And so I want you to see what he's saying because I want to respond directly to this. So he'll say, or he says, I know I've been sending chapter link messages sometimes, but daily docs, no way. That's so much, right? So the fundamental difference, though, Sean, that I am probably not articulating very well, these people are not writing those documents. The AIs are. The AI is writing this because I actually, at one point, when I first started talking to this person, I looked at what was being sent. It's completely nonsensical. At first, it looks like something is being said, but then when you take a deeper dive into it, it's complete nonsense. It's not something that I think even a normal human being could manufacture because okay, maybe that's too far of a stretch. There probably are people that could put something like that together. But this is incoherent gobbledygook. And I think that it's like the interaction with the AI saying, let's prepare today's deep discussion. And then the AIs are spewing out all of this slop. And even the person that's sending it, maybe for them it kind of makes sense because it's a deep dialogue that they've been having with the AI, so they can skim it and be like, yep, all that's right, let's send this out. The part that is maybe the craziest, right? So look, I'm going to be honest. The description write-ups for all of the VODs on GTT, Claude assists me with all of those. I skim those, but Claude does the heavy lifting. The parts that I'm involved in is I create the content, and I generally create the titles, and I create the thumbnails and all that stuff. But the summaries, Claude's just better at this. So I use Claude to do this, and then what I do is I skim it. I make sure that this makes sense. And then after I skim it, we'll have an interaction, and then it'll do some proofing of it, and then I'll be like, this is good. So what these people are doing is, I'm almost tempted to show you one of these emails, but I don't want to call the person out directly. I have them all. They're in my jump box because they just get forwarded straight to the trash. And again, I'm not trying to make fun of this person. This is not my goal. I'm actually trying to empathize with them and try to figure out a way that we can help people like this, because this is probably going to become a bigger and bigger thing as more people that get exposed to AIs have those two properties, right? And I think we probably have some psychologists, psychiatrists, and sociologists. Actually, I'm positive that we do on our Discord. So maybe they'll watch this at some point and they can start to give us some guidance. Actually, this would be a really good time for me to drop a link to the Discord. Oh, and I was going to do something else. what was I going to do? I think I was going to show you guys some more details about the stuff that's going on with GCC. Yeah, let me take a quick tangent to GCC for a moment, and then we'll go back to this. Oh, right. So this, I want to share this with you guys. The thing I was just remembering is that I'm restructuring GCC. So now I've got multiple areas where I can do all the stuff that I want. And like it now has linking embedded. I can edit all of these things. It has this automatic save system. So it's recording and tracking all of this. So even if it crashes, it is always synchronized essentially. There's just like there's a bunch of stuff. It's not ready yet for me to share this for all of you to start using, but I am trying to build it now. So a lot of this stuff is modular and it can be customized. So all of these pages are easy to essentially modify without any of the source code. I may release the source code, but I just kind of don't want people to send it out and include malicious things in it and then pretend like they're me. Because I guess that's like a thing now. Some people have told me that there's some people that are like impersonating me and trying to manipulate them to do like bad things. Anyway, so I probably still need maybe, I don't know, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I don't love all this. Let's just say a few months. Maybe if some of you really, really want access to it because it has built-in integration with social media and you can monitor these things very easily. Like so you can customize it so it will monitor all of your social media and then keep track of all the things, right? This is all customizable and it can be linked to all of your social media and then you can track all this stuff. It has the live stuff that it's tracking and so on and so forth. It doesn't quite stay keyed in the way that it should. For example, right now OBS is telling me there's about 20 people on YouTube, and so that's obviously not showing. It's not perfect, but it's telling you, it's keeping track of some stuff. Anyway, we'll get back to this, and at some point what I want to do is a live stream that just talks about how I am building this, because I think I'm really starting to understand how you can use AIs and build nearly production quality code without being able to deeply reason about the code. This is the $1 million question in my mind that I'm trying to figure out, because I want to enable people that have brilliant ideas, which is a lot of people, but they don't have literacy directly in programming languages. And I believe that there are certain things I'm starting to see emerging that are ways that you can build software that's not vibe coded garbage. And keep in mind, if you use the AIs the way that they're set up right now, at least based on what I'm seeing, it will essentially devolve into vibe coded garbage. You have to keep it on the rails. You essentially have to come back. Let me walk through a little bit on how I'm doing it. And I realize I'm going on 100 different tangents, but all of these are important threads. So what I do is probably once a week, I will realign the code for the system. That during the week, I'll be hacking on it to build new features, right? So as you may be able to tell or may not. It's been a while since I've shown this. Let me try to make it like a little bit easier for all the... Here, we'll just do this. Just make it smaller, just so you can see the general structure. Here, we need to get that part in. All right, perfect. Okay, so during the week, what I'll do is I will tweak at the features and go through what it's not doing properly or restructuring that I want to do. For example, this is set up now to where anytime I edit the Goju's live stream pane, it will automatically update the date so that if I want to screenshot this, it will always show that's what we're talking about in today's live stream, right? And other small things. So this is all, you can actually iterate through now all of these things and edit all of them. And as I was mentioning before, it has this automatic saving aspect into it, which is really important. So I can literally be having Claude working on the code, and I can be in mid sentence on writing out a thought, and it can shut it down, and I won't lose a single keystroke, which is important to me because I'm doing like multiple things at once. Is I'm tracking the stuff for GTT, but I'm also having Claude and the agents level up the code. So during the week, what I'm doing is essentially iterating through the GCC system itself and adding all these features. Then, usually during the weekend, one day I'll spend just realigning it to have code that follows proper large-scale software development principles. This part is critically important. You have to do this part, at least based on what I've seen. If you don't, what will happen is the code will devolve into spaghetti code, and you'll quickly get into the code death spiral, where the code is so bad and there's so much of it, even the AI can't keep things into context. So you're either getting more slop because it's continuing on a bad path, right? The simple canonical example is the if, else, if kind of pattern. And that looks like this, right? Is if this condition, we'll just make this condition 2, else if condition 3, else if, right? You can just see how this is going to continue. Now, and then somewhere at the bottom, maybe you have this else, right? If you follow this, and this is the design, then what the AIs will do is they will continue to follow the existing pattern, and this will lead very quickly to spaghetti code when you get enough conditions in here, especially if you start having conditions that don't match the general theme. It's very easy to do. If your code starts to explode like this will happen everywhere, and all aspects of the code will basically reach a point to where even making the slightest amount of change in the software is going to be very taxing because it's not designed in a modular way. So what I do is during the weekends is I will ask the AI, specifically Claude in this case, to now go back into the system, and we need to revise all of the things that we worked on to level it up to proper software engineering practices. The key point of all this is, as I've been working through these software engineering practices, what's become kind of abundantly clear to me, I need to think about this more, but my early intuitions are you don't really need to understand how to read code. I mean, You do a little bit because I think, okay, let me rephrase this. The more you can read code, the easier it is. So if you're an expert with code, it's a breeze because you can look at it directly and say, oh, yeah, this is so, just don't do that. That's really dumb. But the majority of people that I'm trying to help here are people that are super smart. They have brilliant ideas, but they don't know how to read code. And so I'm trying to come up with a solution that goes to them rather than them coming to us, right? And the truth is, a lot of the people that are on our Discord, or some percentage, are people that are technological or technology enthusiasts, AI enthusiasts, but they're not experts in writing code. So in my meandering of this, I think what's become somewhat obvious is, as long as you understand the principles of large-scale software development itself, you can likely keep the AIs on track and have them build apps that are not going to be slop-coded, vibe-coded demoware that can never be used actually in production. Because at least for me, I'm not interested in toy programs. I haven't been interested in those for a very long time. I'm interested in software that is industrial strength, software that can have a lifetime of years or decades, like Notica, right? Linux, Git, stuff that is just so bulletproof and solid that you can continue to build on it. Because I realize that there's a space for startups and early research where prototyping is the key thing, and that's great. I think you can actually prototype with AI systems without much need for me. That problem is sort of already solved. You just communicate with it, and then it builds a prototype, and you're good to go. The challenge starts to come in when you start to iterate on that prototype to add more and more features without turning the software into complete garbage. This is actually the difference between a junior engineer and like a principal engineer. It's not necessarily the mastery of the programming language. I think a lot of people might be confused about this. Yes, the principal engineer probably has more mastery of the language, but in some cases, that's not even the case. Is like for the newer things, like for example, my students know significantly more about Jupyter notebooks than I do, because they play around with those all the time. In fact, most of them are better Python programmers than I am. But I probably know significantly more about how to build large-scale software, because this is the bigger art of, once you understand all those lower level details, you can start to take a step back and a step back and a step back, and you can see the whole picture. So what I plan to do at some point in the future are a series of VODs around GCC. We're not there yet because I want to build it out more, and I need to make sure that the software, the actual code itself, is pretty much not going to embarrass me. And my bar is like really high for good quality code, like really high. And it is getting there. It's actually almost not bad at this point. Is it on par with Notica? It is not. Is it as good or better than anything that you see from like somebody's PhD dissertation? It absolutely is. And it's largely being done by the AIs. So this is evidence, at least for me, that it can be done. In that VOD series, what I want to do is how you can use the AIs to generate really good code with very little knowledge of code. And I want to go through the code and talk about all the different pieces that make it high quality. And then I want to talk about the software design principles that you need to know in order for this to work. And really, it has a lot more to do with the second piece than the first piece. Because in some sense, the way to think about this is the code is just syntax to express operations that the machine can understand. The software design are concepts that are going to be applied to the software system that is going to be captured in that syntax. So yes, that syntax matters, but the AIs can handle a lot of that. The part that you're not going to get from the AIs for a variety of reasons, largely it's a conflict of their own agenda. Their agenda is to get the answer as fast as possible with the smallest amount of overhead, unless you specifically guide it to do something different, which oftentimes is what I have to do on the weekends. Is I will say, listen, what we need to do now is we need to write really high quality code, and I want you to refactor this. And here are the things that I want you to do. And I'll specifically say, this should not be possible in under an hour, in under 2 hours. This is going to be a huge undertaking even for you. Here are the core principles that you need to follow, and I need you to check in with me every time you complete one of these, and then we will have a discussion on where you are. I'll look at the changes you made, and then we'll move to like the next phase. So anyway, that's going to be part of this VOD series, but I need to get more work done on GCC itself before I feel that we're at the point to where I can show all the code on live stream and walk through all of its superpowers. But it is getting pretty superpowered-y, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that it's building in, and it's building almost all these things in a highly modular way. So yeah. Okay. I think we should take a short break so I can stretch my legs. And then I'm actually going to go through some of the chat and see all the awesome things that I've missed. And then maybe what we'll do is we'll go back to... By the way, this is an entirely new page that I've constructed, and I did it specifically for the live stream discussions. So I know exactly what the heck it is we're talking about, and then the deeper details and all that. So I wonder if this, just out of curiosity, does this thing work? Yeah, there's still some pieces. You can iterate through these things. You can actually so this is essentially keeping logged data of everything that I'm communicating with the AI. And this is really important because sometimes the messages to the AIs don't get sent properly. And this ensures that if anything doesn't get sent, you have a copy of it. And so you literally can just copy it here, paste it back into the AI, and nothing will be lost. So it's like this, when I develop software and do these types of things, generally what I'm doing is I'm treating it with deep, deep care. That it's going to kind of pass my own sniff test on, does this software suck? And if it sucks, it's just sort of not acceptable for me to share with other people, or even for me to use. Okay. So, yeah, let's take a short break. And let's use JB's awesome little thing that he built. By the way, thank you, JB. This thing is invaluable. I have no idea where I put it, but it's actually so important that it's on my desktop. We'll take 10. That'll be a good breather for all of us. Oh, before we do that, one last thing. Let me just drop the so thank you guys for subbing on the new YouTube channel. You're directly impacting its trajectory, and things are starting to work with it because of your subs. It's basically learning, and that's how I can see the virality of some of the shorts and even some of the longs. But it's very clear to me now that the algorithm is actually working the way that it's supposed to, which is fantastic. But we still need a bigger base. Probably need at least 1,000 people that are part of the base that actually deeply care about technology. And so obviously that's probably all of you that are here. So let me grab it's basically youtube.com at Goju Trek. Goju Trek. And if you're so inclined, the thing that matters the most is just the sub, because then the algorithm will learn that you're the kind of person that it should be communicating with, and then it expands the way that it thinks about these things. So that's super duper helpful to get the YouTube algorithm back on track. All right, 8 minutes, and we'll be back. Okay. I'm back. And we still have 3 minutes to burn. Yeah, I was making a drink. Yeah, good call. And it's pretty boring. But I will tell you, at least for the moment, I've changed my target. And again, I'm not saying do this, so don't do this. Unless you're already doing it. But check this guy out. They're not a sponsor. And it's surprisingly good. At least in my opinion. So yeah, I dabble and explore. And that's another one on my cough syrup or whatever you guys are saying list. Before I go through the comments, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to try to speed run comments rather than trying to go through each one individually. But before I do that, if there are students on the chats, in particular, this is just for you students or people that are directly engaged with universities. I'm going to scroll way to the bottom here so we can... No, Vic. That's sugar-free. That's the Pepsi Zero, but it's bad in a different way. So yeah, there's 3 things I'm saying don't do. Don't do the sugar-free, don't do the nicotine, and don't do the caffeine. Those are my 3 sins. I think I'm actually doing pretty good if you consider the landscape of stuff. But yes, don't be me. Be better. So thanks, Vic, for calling me out. I appreciate the love and keeping me honest. Yeah, I don't know. I don't drink the sugar stuff directly, and I know it could be as bad or worse, but we're each traveling our own path. Okay, for the students, this is the part that I would really like some guidance on, because, you know, I teach, but I don't take classes. I mean, not at the university. So I don't really know what is acceptable. Truthfully, I don't know what is normal or not normal. But I need to schedule the class and that I teach that you guys are aware of. So machine programming and stuff. And I'll teach diff and all that stuff. And I may start expanding my charter. So I teach, well, maybe 2 classes, right? Maybe. Machine programming and maybe deterministic intent folding. But give me 1 second. I want to try to do something here. No, it's this one. Yeah. Okay. Put this one here. Okay. So the class times are and date is, or day of the week is what I'm looking for guidance on. Because I've moved slightly outside the valley, simply because I don't need to be inside of Silicon Valley directly anymore, and just I have other plans, but I still need to be close enough to the university where I can get there. But now it's a little bit of a drive. So with that in mind, I'm only going to teach 1 day. Single day. And I'm probably going to teach I'm looking at the time slots. In the single day range, what I'm allowed to pick, or what are the general picks, I think I'm allowed to break from this model because I'm a little bit more senior now, and I think they'll kind of accommodate it. But the 3 patterns they recommend are these for single days. 80 minutes, 110 minutes, and 170 minutes. And I'm going to do the 170 because my class is pretty intense and we need a lot of time. That gives us close to 3 hours. I'm doing the math right. And then I'll break that up into these 2 segments. Now, the part that I need your guys' help with are these 2 questions. What? No, Vic, it's all, yeah, you're wrong about the sugar part, but you're right about how I don't do what I'm doing. And it's all in good fun. So I appreciate it, brother. So what I need help with are what are the best days to do this for a single day? And what's the best starting time to do this? Now, again, the reason why I need help is I just teach guys, so I don't know what is normal for the students these days. Like back when I was taking classes, it was, I guess, normal for students to have 8 a.m. classes. And while I didn't love that, it was totally acceptable to do like classes that start at 11 a.m. That wouldn't be unheard of at all. But what I've noticed at the uni, at least in the last couple of years, it seems as though later in the day is preferred. But too late is obviously not great. So I'm allowed to start the class anywhere, again, this is the normal bands, from 8:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., even if I'm teaching for 3 hours. Now, what I want to try to do is make sure all the students, it's good for them. It has the minimal amount of conflicts, and it's a time where they're actually going to show up because I think it's important to have that face-to-face. More for them than for me. So what are all of your guys' thoughts? I mean, particularly this is for students, but for, hey, Mike, good to see you, brother. But for anybody else, I would love to hear what your thoughts are. If you're in my situation, and I really am asking everybody. I'm literally looking at the sheet right now, and I have to send this over to the university by the end of the weekend. And then once I decide, I'm locked in. They don't let me flex on this. So with those parameters, that I'm probably going to do the 170 minutes, and the start time is between 8:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m., and I'm going to do it for one day. What are your general thoughts on the time and then the day? What do you think? I think I have an idea of what potentially works for me. Morning classes? Okay, Noel, can you expand on morning? Like, do you mean anything that starts before 11 a.m. or Gabs is saying start around 8:30 a.m. Learning after 1 p.m. can be tiring, especially for 3-hour lectures. Yeah, I agree with that. And this is part of where I'm a little bit conflicted, is I think that the professional world, most of us on that are Jeets, 8:30 is a normal time for us, right? We're going to be awake 7 a.m. or something. And I want to believe that the students are not going to have too much trouble with that either. But I'm so not connected to that. I don't know if that's asking too much of them. I'm also, what I do too is I give them, how have I done this in the past? I give them extra credit for attending the lectures. I don't think it counts against you, but it's, in the past I've only taught 2 days a week, and I think it was 0.25% for every lecture. And there's 20 lectures, so it's a total of an extra 10% to your grade just for showing up for the lectures. And oftentimes that can be really helpful for the students because where I teach, they all want A's. I mean, I don't think anybody doesn't want A's, but this particular group is very much, if I don't get an A in every class, my life is going to fall apart. So I try to make it so they have an opportunity to have things in their hands, especially because the subject matter and the tests and the project, I can be a little bit of a stickler when it comes to those things. 6-8, yeah. Mike. Yeah, okay. That would be the true test, right? Many of my students, they like want to be startup founders, so that would actually be a really hilarious test. Out of selfishness too, if I'm being honest, it's actually better for me if it's earlier because I will miss a lot of the traffic because I have to drive in now, and it's a little bit of a commute. So if I leave my place like around 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., I'll miss probably a reasonable amount of the traffic. The times that I think are the absolute worst for me is probably if I am starting to teach maybe around the 10 to 11:30 range, because I think that would kind of put me in the heart of the traffic and it would make my commute pretty sucky. I'm speculating because I've always been inside of the valley. Oh, so Vic, right now this is, at least based on what we've done historically, it's all, yeah, bro, I love it, man. I am too in a lot of cases. You and I are wired very much the same. Vic, right now it's historically been only in person, but the university may lift that, and it may be, I may start to be able to do the virtual thing. Okay, so Sean's coming in saying that he's not a student, but he thinks the late afternoon, evening is the best. Almost no one has a schedule to be sleeping that time of day. It's right before dinner, and I think I can let them eat in the class if I want them to. Like, in fact, no, I think about it. No, they've done this in the past because I used to teach, what was it? From 11 to 1. And a lot of the students would eat lunch during my class, which I'm fine with, actually. I'm totally cool for them to literally sit down with the popcorn, and that doesn't really bother me at all. The only thing Founders will do any hour. Founders, this would be a really good litmus test, right? Is I could say, this class is basically for all the aspiring founders and hardcore technologists. It starts at 5 a.m. That would weed a lot of people out right away on if they really have the fire of what is required to do stuff like running your own company. I think that there's a big disconnect for a lot of the romanticized view of being a founder and the reality of actually running your own company. For those of us that do run our own stuff, we know it's far more intense than the sensational legacy media would point out. Okay, so Us is saying, or sorry, Dino's saying, PM any day. Yeah, that's awesome, Vic. Yeah, so where I am, we had that for the years where that was really active, and nowadays there was, I think, I can't remember the year, maybe it was 2022, it was mandated that all of the classes be in person because they wanted to essentially get the face-to-face interaction. But I may see about this year of letting it be virtual or non-virtual. My students have wanted it, but the university in the past has basically said no. But maybe now that I've been doing it for 5 years or so, they'll trust me enough to do that. Okay. Any other comments that people want to share? Hold on, let's see. Okay, this is just people talking to each other. Oh, sweet. That's awesome, Noel. Yeah, so if you do get in, by the way, first of all, congratulations, because it's obviously a very hard place to get into. But swing by my class, CS 329M. And I'll, as I usually do, I teach only in the autumn quarter, which is September to December. I might start to expand that, but we'll see. Okay, final call for any comments on this before I switch to other topics. I think I'm gonna switch to looking through the chat. Before I do that, users asking, is it true it's the death of old software with AI like Microsoft? Okay, this is a very complicated topic, and I don't want to take this lightly because you can kind of get the soundbite answer from a lot of people, especially a lot of people that really don't seem to know what they're talking about, which is unfortunate. There are many, from my perspective, there are many questions that still exist with AI that are not super clear to me. And this is really important because it prefaces any answer that I think any of us can give. And what I mean by this is there is, I think, this assumption that when you have a new technology, that new technology will become pervasive and ubiquitous, and that's absolutely not the case. That it does not always happen like this, and in many cases, it doesn't go this way at all. Some examples of that are Sony's Betamax. In fact, Sony's a really good example of coming up with awesome technology that then ends up dying because Sony tried to do too much with it. But you can see other companies do this. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is a lot of my answer will be predicated on what the landscape looks like in terms of availability of AI as a commodity that everyone can use. A good example of something that is very sort of like an elitist thing, it exists, but it's not the general way that things would be done, is like the supersonic jet from, what was this? I forget the name of it now. But it was like those super fast jets that were all the buzz at some point. Oh, maybe a better example is like the electric scooters. I think the electric scooters, maybe, that they were coming into fashion. And there are a lot of people that were betting on it. And then I think a lot of those companies just totally failed. And that, I think that form of mechanism, that form of travel still exists in pockets, but it's not supported widely. So what is not clear to me is, as the margins for the AI companies become tighter and the fanaticism settles and people start to use this not as a shiny new toy, but as something that truly is a mechanism of productivity, what the accessibility will be based on the overhead. This is perhaps, Learjet, certainly that could absolutely be it. But so the reason why this is really important to understand the future of software is, depending on how capable the AIs can be for a reasonable price will largely dictate how ubiquitous it becomes for use across all of software. I think perhaps a good example is Linux. Linux is a great alternative for a lot of people because you can essentially get Linux for free through open source. And therefore, because people that are very budget-minded will just use Linux without any overhead. So now people that are doing software development in that space are directly limited to the capabilities of what exists in Linux, not what exists more broadly, let's say, in Windows or Mac OS, because of the price difference. And in fact, when you watch the Hostinger VOD, you'll see that the options that I have for the operating system, they're all Linux. And they're all free Linux. It's not commercial Linux like Red Hat. And a big reason for that is that company, Hostinger, can invoke those operating systems without any overhead. So there's no choice for Windows or Mac OS. And therefore, those options are out for Hostinger because of the overhead that they invoke. And Hostinger likely wouldn't be able to even exist unless Linux existed, which makes it possible for them to put up hardware sandboxes with a virtually free software stack, right? This is a big reason why people use VS Code as well, is it's free. So the part that I haven't figured out, and I think many of us are still trying to understand, is what will the commodity versions of the AIs look like, and what will their capabilities be, specifically for software development? Once those answers become more clear, it will be very clear, or clearer, about what the future of software development will look like. What I think, at least as a kind of quick answer that doesn't exactly explain the... I think that's exactly right, Sean, is just because we have the capability of something, if it's out of reach because of constraints that prevent it from being ubiquitous, then those aspects likely won't be part of the general software development path moving forward. Yeah. Okay, so with all of that preamble, the yeah, and so user, this comment about Anthropic is having massive unheard of sales. Uh-huh. It is. But part of that is Anthropic is a private company still. And so we don't actually know what their books look like. We don't actually know what their true overhead is. And because they're getting massive amount of investments, as many companies do, they will give you deep information about their revenue because that looks really good. But they won't share what their actual costs are because that looks maybe not so good. The number that really matters in these cases is the profitability, the actual amount of money that's keeping them in the green or the black, as they say. And so even with massive amount of sales and a massive amount of revenue, if their overhead is significantly larger, which we likely will never know until they become public because they don't have to disclose this information, it could be that they're completely upside down. An example of this is Uber, right? I think Uber was maybe only recently profitable within the last 2 years or so. And the only way that they achieved that is through price gouging. Yeah, exactly, Vic, right? Is so what Uber did is it went public, and then we saw that they were completely underwater, and then they inflated their prices gradually everywhere, and the amount of business that Uber gets for their ride sharing is not entirely clear. But they found other avenues that I think are profitable for them, like Uber Eats. So it could very well be the case. I don't know, and I think many of us don't know what the answer is to this yet. It could be the case that using AIs for software development, specifically to reason about software that is complex, like large-scale software, it could very well be the case that that is not a viable business model because the computational overhead is too large to work with large-scale software. This is, in my strong opinion and belief, the reason why a lot of these companies will focus on things like vibe coding or building prototypes or working with startups is it's much easier, significantly easier, to write code from scratch and manage a 1,000-line piece of software, 10,000-line piece of software. It is significantly more complex. The complexity is not linear. It's multiplicative. That when you have to start reasoning about 100,000-line programs, or in some cases, for the very large systems, million to 10 million line pieces of software, like Kubernetes, then the value of the AIs for that large-scale development could be negative because the overhead for it is far too large and it just simply can't be used. It basically would function as Stack Overflow functions, is they can give you a general algorithm, but the integration, the true application of that code into a system without breaking 100 different things could be outside of the computational tractability. for what the AIs can do. And so what I think myself and many others that are deeply looking at this, what I think is going to happen is when the first AI company IPOs, particularly Anthropic or OpenAI, I'm really hoping Anthropic, because then we will start to see the real prices emerge for things like Claude Code. Because they won't be able to mislead the investors. They won't be able to hide the books and the actual cost. It has to be, I mean, that's what it means to be a public company, right? Is that stuff has to be public record so it can be scrutinized. And once that data becomes available, we will have, I think, a much clearer picture on how things like Claude Code can actually be used. What I think about the future of software development right now with AIs is language models are incredibly valuable for rapid prototyping and helping stand up sort of a straw man for software systems. I think that, at least for me, I'm 10x, 100x faster using Claude for that initial infrastructure, because it doesn't have to deal with all the issues of working in an existing system. It has a blank slate, and it types faster than I type, and it has access to significantly more information than I have cached in my mind. What happens over time, though, is there starts to become a shift. There's like a gradient shift where the AIs become less and less useful and humans become more and more useful, where their ability to integrate the code, and literally, I'm actually already starting to see this with GCC, is that the initial building of GCC was easy and it was fast. Now that GCC, this is the control center, right? This guy. Now that this thing is getting more complex, when I do changes, what happens almost every time now is it breaks something in the process of adding something, even though this is deterministic software. Now, what's great is because it's deterministic, I can walk through it and say, oh, this doesn't work. You broke this, and now go fix this. And hopefully it will fix it in a way that doesn't break 10 other things. This is also why really important software engineering practices need to be understood when building these systems for large-scale software, is you need to guide it so it builds modular pieces of software, and then it fixes the bug at the source. That's why, like, for example, all of these editable windows, I demanded that it rewrite all of these. What it was doing, it was coding each of these independently, even though their behavior is nearly identical. The only thing that's like slightly different is that the input from this, when I send it, goes to the AI. And these guys don't have an input where I send it to like an AI. That's basically the only difference. But what it was doing is it was coding each of these ones independently. And there's a lot of them. There's like 10 of these now. So think about that for a second. It had 10 different copies of the same piece of code with nearly identical behavior. Why is it doing it like this? Well, the way that you build software is through iterative refinement, and you don't know necessarily that you're going to do all the things yet. It's through experimentation and interaction with your user base and all of these things, right? But then because it's doing the low-hanging fruit, it's not taking the time to refactor things to get in front of the stuff that needs to be modularized. Now, in an existing system, or a system that is already a little bit out of control, first of all, the process of identifying all of the overlapping components that could be modularized is extremely hard to do. Like, it becomes more about designing the system or refactoring the system such that it can be easily extensible and changed without breaking a bunch of things than it is about the flashy new feature. And what we don't know yet is how applicable the AIs will be for extremely large-scale software, or software as it grows to become more than just sort of like toy things. We know it's very good with toy programs or MVPs, this type of thing. And the big open question, the $1,000 question, $1 million question, is not about the capability, because you could add hundreds or thousands of nodes to the server farm to make it work. The big constraint is the amount of cost that it will incur to do these things. And I don't know exactly. Like, when we look at the gradient of the size of the software program, I know that it gets more and more expensive the more lines of code. That part is very clear. They also currently lose their ability to make reasonably good decisions. The larger the software system becomes, is they can follow the task, but the task is not just building the thing, it's then building it in a way that doesn't break the 10 other things. And from what I've seen so far, even using, like, I don't know what I'm using. I'm probably using Opus 4.8 now or something, but I'm on the Claude Code Max plan, where I think I have like unlimited tokens or something. And I'm burning through, like over 1 million tokens a day. And I don't even know if that's actually going to be sustainable for them. I'm pretty sure that they're only billing me $200 a month. I'm pretty sure that I'm using way beyond $200 a month. So now, when we find out that the prices are significantly more, I'm going to be massively hamstrung. And then that goes back to users' original question, as how does this exactly affect the future of software development? And I think that's the $1 million question, because once we can more deeply understand that, we will deeply understand the future. I do believe that AI is going to fundamentally change the way that we do software development, but I do think that, at least in its current state, it becomes significantly less valuable the more production quality and complex the software is. And most of the folks that I work with or speak to in industry that are working on massive software projects, like real systems that are very large, they are using AIs as a thought partner, but they don't really write any of the code, like none of it, because they just can't get it right. And it's too sensitive. That they, like, so maybe they'll use it as a boilerplate. It's very much like how people would use Stack Overflow. Is this a boilerplate, and then it's like, cool, now I know the algorithm. Okay, now I have to do the hard work of actually integrating it in a way that makes sense. So they'll use it in a kind of a similar way to that. And that works, right? But that is a very different model than what people use it for when they're building MVPs. Also notice that if that is the extent to which the AIs can be used for large scale or industrial strength software, that basically means all of this BS about how AI is going to replace all the coders. Well, if they can't code it right, and the coders are the only ones that can, logically, you still need all the coders. It just doesn't make sense to me. And this is a big reason why I think that for I think that the demand for software developers and engineers is actually going to skyrocket. I think it's going to be the opposite of what a lot of people are thinking, because they're not understanding the volumetric code slop that's being produced without software engineers to oversee it. They think that software engineers write code. They don't understand that software engineers are engineering software systems. The writing code part is easy. The building robust systems is extremely hard. So anyway, I think that that's my general take on that. And I think I want to adjourn for today because we've hit the 3-hour mark. And I want to apologize. I didn't get to the comments at all, but the dog's nagging and my voice is getting tired, so I'm going to wind it down. But we'll probably, heck yeah. Yep. Yeah, and there's this really interesting article just as a follow-up. There's some people that are saying the AI layoffs are happening because AI is becoming more and more competent and stuff. And I do think that's true for some industries. I do actually think that for jobs that are just copy-paste and they weren't really using any critical thinking, yeah, I think the AI can do your job. But if you're a critical thinker and your job, what you do is reliant on your ability to make complex decisions without egregious errors, I don't see the AIs replacing those people anytime soon. And a lot of that is the senior software engineers. The part that kind of sucks is for the junior folks that are trying to get into the industry, and I think the best bet for them is to become masters of AI, just so their efficacy in building out early things or fixing bugs is very strong. Something like that. Anyway, thanks everybody. This is amazing. And we're back. I apologize for a little bit of a break, but we may be streaming again tomorrow. And hold on, let me do one more time. Let me drop the Discord channel. You guys can hop on there if you want. It's fun. It's awesome. Almost everybody is super cool and just wants to make the world a better place and fight the greed. And then let me also drop the... It's faster for me to just type this than actually get it from a browser. And that's the new YouTube. Any subs to help correct the algorithm are deeply appreciated. All right, folks. Have a great Saturday or whatever day it is where you are. And